Oh, this is not working. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming out in the middle of the summer when none of us really want to be here at night. I'd rather be on the deck, rather be drinking my beer on the deck and having a good time. But we're going to talk about a topic that's actually kind of dry. And so it's not the funnest topic in the world. So I try to talk about structured content in terms of something that I love, which is cooking. So we're going to change it around a little bit and not go too deep into any coding, not go too deep into any topics. We're splitting the time, so I kept this kind of at a very high level. And if you have any questions at the end, we can we have plenty of time to go through them. My name is Dory Kellner, and I run Sleight of Hand Studios. We're a Drupal agency in Fairfax. I've been around for about 12 plus years, and we do a lot of development for associations and nonprofits. I have a very strong data background. So before I found Sleight of Hand, I did survey data collection, from survey design methodology through data collection and analysis and delivery of data to the government. I was one of the program managers for the U.S. Postal Service Data Warehouse program. So I drown myself in data. I am a data geek. And I think because of that, I really have a good appreciation for what data can do and how it can advance us in the web space. And that also allowed me to do something else that I really love, which is food and wine. So I have a certification in wine. I've done two. I have an intermediate and an advanced degree in wine education. And you cannot talk about wine to anybody unless you really understand it. You can say, I like it or I don't like it. But if you don't understand the vocabulary of the industry, you really can't talk to people about it. So you have to know that a chateau is in Bordeaux. You have to know the different grape varietals and what they should taste like and what that profile should be and how to compare the wine in your glass to the ideal profile for that wine grown in that particular region. And that takes a lot of study and a lot of understanding. And I think that I was able to understand that really well because I understand data. I understand how to classify information and how that information goes across an entire domain. And the same goes for cooking. Cooking has some very specific ways that we talk about preparing food. We talk about the ingredients. We talk about the process. We talk about the chefs. We talk about who the chefs belong to. Where did they come from? When we create a common vocabulary, people can really understand what it is that we're talking about, and we can therefore communicate better, not just to each other, but to places unknown. And that's what we're going to get into today. Building on Carrie's presentation a couple of months ago, and I did a similar presentation at Drupal GovCon a few weeks ago, we discussed domain modeling. So you're in a specific area. Say I'm going to keep talking about recipes. So say I am a recipe website. How am I going to construct my world around knowing that I'm a recipe website versus I'm a restaurant that puts recipes on the web versus I'm a blog. I'm a blogger who likes to cook and I post recipes on the web. Those are all really different domains. And you have to understand the domain in which you're operating before you start doing any content modeling. So in those two prior presentations, we discussed domain modeling, and I'm not going to get back into that here, but you can go online and listen to Carrie's presentation, or you can go onto SlideShare and find my presentation from Drupal GovCon, and I'll be posting the recording of that fairly soon as well. So what we really want to talk about tonight then is from the content model forward. Why do we care about having a content model? And what are we going to do with it? Okay, as designers, what are we going to do with it? So let's start with this pretty picture. This is what most people see when they put a new page up on their website. There's a big blob, a big open space in which everyone just wants to stuff their content. So how many of you have worked with a client who just said, just give me a place to put my content. Let me decide what the colors are. Let me decide how big the font is, right? Let me decide where the pictures go. Raise your hands, right? Everybody, right? They want this because this is easy. They don't have to think. All they do is sit down, write something in Word, cut and paste it in, and go home at the end of the day. But this does nobody any good. And so our job is to not only get rid of this content that's trapped here in the body field, in the blob, not just get rid of it, but also make it less painful. It's a good word. Make it less painful for our content editors to follow a protocol. So they don't want to have to think. They don't want to have to follow a protocol. How do we get them there? How do we get them to understand why it is better to break this blob apart? How we can get relationships out of this, how we can get exciting, dynamic pages out of breaking apart a blob. And this is one way we might be able to get across to them what we're trying to do. We don't know where our content is going anymore. Okay? We don't know what kind of device, how big the screen, is it in a car, is it on a refrigerator? Is somebody scraping the content off your website and using it elsewhere? We just don't know. And so if you really want your content to be seen and you really want that kind of awareness around your thought leadership, which is what everyone says, well, we're the thought leaders in this industry. Well, if you really want people to care about your content, then it's time to start realizing that your content is not just living on your one page on your website. So what we're going to talk about tonight is how to plan for structuring your content. So we're not going to do a really deep dive into content modeling or into any of the items that I'm going to discuss tonight. So we're going to try to keep it short and give John a chance to talk as well. But how many of you remember those great toys where you were 3 years old and you learned, okay, I stacked the green ones on the end, and then you got kind of cocky and you said, I bet I can fit the green one in the red slot. And no, you couldn't do that, could you? But we love structure. When we're kids, we're brought up to love it, to learn the world through what works and what doesn't work, and to get tactile feedback. It's like, okay, this doesn't fit here. I guess I need to put all the green ones in the green slot. And we give people little clues along the way. There's little markers here, that say, hey, that's the purple one. And then, you can start teaching your kids, count, how many holes are in there and how many rods, and put them all together. So what we want to do is design some structure around our content. And when we design structure around our content, what do? We lose control. And that's what our clients do not like. They don't want to lose control over what their content looks like. But if anybody's done a redesign, you know that they really should lose control. The style sheets, the styling, all of that needs to belong to the designer. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to have conversation and get your client to a point where they accept, i.e. sign off, on all the styling that you're doing on the website. I'm not saying you go and say, it's this font and this color and this size and there's no negotiation over it. Of course, you're going to have discussion. But once that's locked in, you're not going to give them the opportunity to change it. So if you say an H2 is a certain point of a certain font in a certain color, that is what it is. And it isn't going to be changed because somebody decided today is Green Day. Okay? So we're going to talk about content modeling, and we're going to talk about design systems. And I want to end this presentation by bringing together those two concepts, which I think are very much related, but I don't think people recognize how the design systems can really be fed by structured content and how helpful that is in the design process. So we're going to start kind of where, you know, Carrie left us actually, which is content modeling and creating these chunks of information. So we like to call them content types, which are the containers in which unique types of content are structured. So if I am doing this magazine, this online recipe website, I have a lot of chefs who have contributed to the website. So I'm going to call them a person or people, and I'm going to decide they need a certain amount of information for each one. And you want to be as flexible as possible with this information. So you see I have full name, but I also have first name and last name as separate fields. This isn't too taxing on a content editor. They can do this. And the reason we want to do this is because a full name, we might want to say Jacques Pepin, but first name, last name, if I want to sort by P, I need that last name. I don't want to be parsing that out. So I want the last name, I want an image, and the image is going to have certain size requirements. And if I'm doing, I hope, a responsive website, perhaps I have multiple images. Perhaps I say we're going to serve up different resolutions so that they can download quicker on mobile. I'm going to have a summary that perhaps I can use for Twitter. Perhaps I use it in conjunction with a title in order to give somebody a quick way of knowing who this person is. I'm going to have their full biography. And then I'm going to have a couple other things, like maybe, who are they? Are they a sous chef? Are they an executive chef? What's their role? Do I want somebody to type that in to the field? One? No. I want to say, this is our structure, this is our taxonomy, and here are the vocabulary terms that go along with it, and this is what you get to choose from. So a lot of thought ahead of actually creating your content. And a few other fields that might be interesting for us in order to control the design. So structuring content, yes, it's a good idea for all sorts of reasons regarding getting your content picked up on the web and getting good SEO and getting Google to recognize you and having people share your data. But it's also great for creating designs that are structured and standardized and follow nice patterns. So if we then go into how do I communicate this information, you get the old spreadsheet out and you start writing down what it is you want. So I don't want to say that this is an easy job, and just because we're going through this quickly does not mean this is easy. You have already probably been through a big domain modeling discovery session with your clients, trying to understand all the content that could possibly be available. And you kind of want to do this without even looking at their website to begin with. You just want to understand, you know, what it is that this organization ought to be doing, because a lot of them are doing wrong stuff. I had a client that had about 2,000 pages of content. And by the time we were done putting up the new website, we were down to about 200 pages of content. We threw a lot of stuff away because they were just doing it wrong. And we just said, here's what's left. We'll put that up, soft launch that, and then decide what goes next. Where are the gaps? Where are the holes? And there's nothing wrong with that. So when we're trying to figure out what it is that we need, what kind of data do we need for this system, I want to see designers involved in this process. So you're going to probably have a content strategist who owns this, who really understands things like field types and properties and relationships between different types of content. You're going to have somebody who knows that, and you might not know that. But as a designer, you have some ideas as to what you want these pages to look like. And you do not want to come back into this process 2 months later after you've designed all your wireframes and say, okay, now we need this data in order to be able to do my design. You've just wasted a lot of time and money right there. So if you're involved on the front end of this, you can start thinking about what the site needs to look like, and then what data you need to drive that information. Okay. So once the strategist, the content strategist, has figured out what content types and what taxonomies and what things are needed in order to drive this website, they generally come up with some sort of a chart like this that shows, okay, there's a person might have many recipes, they might have many roles, a recipe might have multiple steps, and they kind of scope all this stuff out, and you know, that's like, okay, that's a nice deliverable, then what do we do with that? What if you don't know what to do with it? So let's take a step back. You know, that was all a nice pretty picture. How do I know it's right? What does right mean? So one really cool place to go to figure out if you're on track in a domain area that you're not familiar with, and honestly, how many of us are like intimately familiar with the areas in which we're asked to operate? Schema.org is a great place to go. And schema.org is a collaborative effort led by Google, a couple of other of the big social groups, to categorize different types of content. So I went there and I said, what does recipe look like? And I was actually able to pull this up, and it tells me it has different properties like cook time and nutrition and prep time and an ingredient. And if you wanted, if you are really so inclined and you have a very big web presence, you can actually tag your content to match schema.org. And then other organizations can come into your website and actually start picking up your data. And Google can come in and start picking up your data and use it because it's tagged in a very consistent way. So this is a really cool place. Even if you don't end up tagging your content and using it in that manner, it's a great place to just explore. How is it that the rest of the world is talking about my domain? So when I started this presentation, I talked about wine and how I had to learn the vocabulary around my industry. And this is a great place to go and do that. So I suggest if you have any time, just start perusing it. Just search it out for the different topic areas that you're working in and see how people talk about your topic area. And so if you're not really adept at writing data models, you can at least get some really great ideas from this. Okay. And then, of course, you need a CMS. If you're going to do a website with structured content, you need a CMS that's going to be able to handle it. So what do I mean by that? I think everybody goes, oh, my CMS has fields. I can make fields. Okay. Can you make fields of certain sizes? Can you make fields contingent on other fields? Can you make fields like this, which is going out to a taxonomy and pulling in the terms? Can you make fields like affiliation, which is actually going to another piece of content entirely? It's going to an entirely separate piece of content that has information about different magazines from which these recipes have been taken. So Bon Appetit is an entirely different piece of content in the website, and yet I can connect it here to whoever this chef is going to be when I fill in the data. Okay. This is an example of how we do it in Drupal. Okay. So the top chart here is the person that we just talked about. The person has a full name, a last name, a first name, the summary bio, all of that information. And when you get to role, you can see we have a field type called a term reference. And what that allows us to do in Drupal is to go out to any vocabulary that we have defined on our website and pull those terms in as a field to our content. And then there's another one next to affiliation called an entity reference. And that allows us to go out and pull in any other piece of content that we want that we've called an affiliation, which are the magazines or restaurant names or whatever that this organization has. So this gives us a lot of flexibility. And this is how the developers are going to take your spreadsheet and actually translate it into what Drupal's expecting in order to do this. And I have had people say, well, why can't you just say to the developer, I need a recipe content type? Anyone know what's wrong with that? Okay. When we end up doing things like that, we kind of get whatever it is the developer feels like giving us in that particular time. This is nothing against developers, because I am a developer and I started my career as a developer, but it isn't our job as developers to figure out what the right content model is. If somebody said to me, I need a recipe content type, I would give them mostly a big blob, and then maybe a byline for whoever created it, and maybe a term that they can classify it by. And I'd say, here's your content type. And then they go, well, what about? Okay, so we want to avoid that, well, what about? I've heard so many people tell me, oh, we wanted an event, we wanted a system that did events, and so we told the developer, well, build us an event, module in our website. And then what they got back was something that they couldn't filter or sort or organize in any way, shape, or form. If they wanted to take, say, the titles of the events from the one that's coming up the soonest to the one most in the future and put just those titles on the homepage, they couldn't do it. They couldn't figure any of that out, because a developer, they're at the point of development, they want to be able to build this. So if we go back and we give them the information they need from that spreadsheet in order to build this, then we're light years ahead of the game. Okay? So now let's talk about my content editor. This is the form that we're giving my content editor. It's not that onerous. It really is quite simple. And yes, I probably want to put a WYSIWYG editor here so that they could maybe do bullet lists, maybe do links, stuff like that within their content. But I am not going to allow them to decide that something's turning green. Not happening. I probably will allow them to put subheadings in and have those subheadings actually come out semantically as H2s and H3s. That's good. I'll give them that. But we want to make sure that they have the easiest time as possible and the fewest decisions to make as possible. So we're trying here to separate the content from what the content looks like. Hugely important part of this. So if I can structure the content, then I can be free as the designer to say, this is what that piece of content looks like, and I know reliably that it's going to be consistently used that way. So here we've filled in the information, we've uploaded a photo, we've given him his summary and his bio, we assigned him a role of executive chef and affiliation of food and wine, and we click this little box called featured. There's a lot of different ways to do this. This was the easiest way to actually communicate the concept, but this is basically saying, make this guy my featured chef this week. This is the guy I want. I want to treat him differently. Now, as a content editor, I would not know this, and as a developer, I would not know this. But as a designer, you probably know that you have a page of chefs, and you want one of them to be a featured chef. And for whatever reason, whatever the parameters are for determining who that featured chef is at any given time, you need some way to decide that information. So right here, I just put a tick mark here just to make it easy, but there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Okay? And then that brings us into design systems, our second topic. So how do I get from structured content into design systems? It's because I am trying to come up with a way for designers to reliably use content in a repeatable way. Something that's reusable, something that's going to give me a cohesive, consistent look and feel every time. And so we've taken these concepts of pattern libraries and atomic design, which you probably all want to research because we don't have time to really go into them here, and maybe we can do another session on them, in the fall or in the winter. But we've taken that concept from manufacturing, basically. So when the Model T was on the assembly line, somebody was putting every piece and part together. So they were putting in the window and in the door and the gear shift, and every piece was done separately. And that is a huge use of time on the assembly line. It is a huge problem in quality control. And if you can imagine trying to do that in a website, you know that you have ended up with really big CSS files. So every time you created a new section of the website, you're like, oh, let's design it that way. And you have all this overlapping CSS that you probably just don't need. And then if somebody decided they wanted to change the size of certain fonts in certain locations, you'd go, yeah, I can do that. And yes, if I changed it over here, it probably changed a third of the site. But then maybe I'd have to go to a couple of other CSS files, and because gee, I kind of repeated that over here, and you know, because it was a different section of the website, so I made a new CSS file, and so we're trying to move away from that. And so here we have the modern way of building a car. So you have these sub-assemblies. So somewhere there is a plant that's producing mirrors. Okay. Someplace there's a plant that's producing the side airbags. Someplace there's a plant that's producing the door handle and the lock mechanism and the interior coverings and all those other little pieces and parts of a door. And those are called submodules, subassemblies. And those are all put together and they become a door. And it's the door that goes off to the line. The door is what gets put on the car. So how much more efficient was that? And how much better quality control do we have because of that? One organization creating the mirror. One organization taking those sub-assemblies and making the door. And then that assembly line can go right through and put the pieces together and push that car out. So there's a new concept, not fairly new concept, called atomic design. You might want to Google Brad Frost if you want more information about atomic design. But basically we're saying there are different pieces and parts of a website display. And a lot of you, you've already done this. You have style sheets. So you say, well, my H1 looks like this and my H2 looks like that, and an image that I'm using in this part of the website, you know, is square, and another one, you know, is a banner size. And you've already done a lot of this, so this should be really familiar. But what we're saying here is that you design your label, you design your input, you design your button. Each of those is an atom. And then you can put those atoms together in different ways. So the way I put it together here, I created a search box. And a search box is and that's called a molecule. So you're building atoms into molecules, and you're building up and up and up to templates and pages. You don't necessarily have to follow this all that rigorously. It's a great conceptual idea though. And to just kind of read through it and see what this is about, it'll get a lot of aha moments out of it. So I put this together and I have created a search box, but any place else I have a button, the button's going to be like that. Any place else I have an input field, it's going to be like this. It's going to be brown. It's going to have the light brown text in it. I'm not going to forget, gee, there's no text in this input field. No, there has to be. That's what we designed it for. My label, it always looks like that. That's how we designed it. So you take these smaller components and you build them into bigger pieces. Okay, so getting back to our website now. If I wanted to create a carousel that has recipes on it, now I have a taxonomy that I've used, French recipes, and I have 2 cards that get displayed in the carousel, and I have a system here. I have a pattern for my carousel that basically has an image of a certain size. It has the title in a certain font. It has the chef as a link, and it has these chunks of information. I didn't have to build this and paste it up there. This data is in the database now. We created structured data. We have a field for the title, a field for the chef, a field for the image, a field for the prep time, a field for the cook time, a field for the number of people served. This is a quick way that you can, on this website, decide what am I making for dinner tonight? Do I need to know more than this? Of course. But as a starter, I don't have 4 hours. I'm not doing this one. No way is that happening. Okay, that serves 6 people. Yeah, I got 6 people coming. Maybe that would be a good side dish. Okay, something quick to catch people's attention. But this beautiful design is only possible because I did my structured data exercise first. So a lot of people are talking about patterns and talking about atomic design, and they're forgetting the whole part where you actually have to have the data that supports it. So you've got to go back and do that structured data work in order to do this. And that's why it's so important for the designer to get involved. Because the designer is the one who's going to come up with how this layout ought to be. You know, the content strategist is going to come up with, this is what, we need this kind of a card. You as a designer is going to say, well, this is what the card needs to look like. Where is it that you're coming together and saying, therefore, my data needs to be structured in a certain way? Okay. So now, if I hit this page and then I go, I want to see what other recipes are from, I love Shock. I want to see these other recipes. What happens if I click that? Now I can use more of my data. So now what I did was I took his name and hey, what happened? That short summary thing that I put in, internationally recognized French chef, I can use that. I can use that to create a really nice header, a header that's probably really good, you know, good word SEO words in it, you know, nicely stuffed, right? I have his photo, I have his bio, I have his role that he's an executive chef. I have all that information. Why not use it here? Okay. I don't necessarily need to know that he came from Food and Wine magazine, but maybe I do. Maybe I can put that there as well. But then look what else I can do with all my recipes. If I have structured my recipes properly, now I can structure my recipes by a new taxonomy. These are chocolate desserts, meat, seafood, baked goods, whatever is reasonable for your site. And for each of the recipes, I'm saying, okay, we have a pattern of 3 recipes per, and each one is going to show an image and a title and a short description. Okay. Now, if I didn't structure my recipe that way, I would never be able to do this. Remember that blob we saw at the beginning that had the whole thing in one great big, you could never do that if you hadn't structured the content that way. Okay. So now we have this beautiful page, and no matter what chef I choose, the same set of patterns is going to apply, and the same type of page is going to paint. And maybe the next chef doesn't have chocolate dessert recipes, but maybe they have breads or whatever. And the system needs to be smart enough to know, this is the data I have, and I know what to do with it. Okay? So now I'm saying, okay, he's an executive chef. What other executive chefs have recipes on this awesome website? Okay, we've got some more. We've got more. Okay, awesome, right? We've got more. And why is he at the top? Because we said he was the featured chef. So now as a designer, I can go into my database. I can say, the database knows this, I can design it. Okay, I can design that he's the featured chef. And I can put his information up there. I could decide that that image needs to be larger or smaller than it was in other places. And then I can also design these tiles for each of the other chefs on the page, each of which has a link that's going to go back to their page with their recipes and their information. So you can see the flexibility of being able to relate pieces of information to each other, and being able to have your information structured in such a granular way that the designer isn't handcuffed anymore. A designer can be involved on the front end of the project and help come up with these patterns that's going to really create the right type of domain expertise that the client wants to have. And it all kind of comes around full circle at this point. Okay. So the question is, do you know where your content is? It's structured content gives you 2 really important opportunities. One is to reach out to the rest of the world to be able to use your content. And the other is for your own use in designing something that's really cohesive and beautiful for somebody to use. And Google's going to pick your stuff up. You don't have to worry anymore about devices. Nobody's designing mobile websites anymore. Your M.dots, those are going away, right? You want something that's we hope. We want something that's responsive. We want, if you're doing web, your job now is to design the best responsive website you can possibly design. And by doing so and coupling it here with structured content, you're able to reach out, the rest of the world's able to reach out and use your website, and you're able to create beautiful design within your site that's not limited by the big blob. Okay? This is what we're aiming for. Did anybody else see that image on the top? Isn't that the most awesome thing, to be able to wear your desktop on your wrist? So it's basically, going out to my phone, and I push a button and it just displays what's on my phone arm, and I can interact with it. I want that. That I am waiting for. I want that refrigerator that tells me what I've got and what recipes I can make out of it. I want that so bad. Tesla display. So you don't know where your data is going. You have no idea where it's going next. And all these displays, all this beautiful web work that we're doing, it can go anywhere. So separating content from the presentation, structured content. Using that structured content on your website to create great presentation, step 2. Oh, that is it. If anyone has any questions.
I just wondered if you could go back to the slide before the Tesla slide. I just wanted to write it down.
Sure. Yes?
What's the armband? Where did you get that picture from?
I don't know where I got it.
Okay.
Do you know where that is? Okay, yeah, I got it in an email the other day and just went crazy over it. Yes?
You mentioned a lot about Drupal.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if there are other languages that can do this just as well, or what makes Drupal the best?
That is a loaded question. I'm partial to Drupal. I'm a Drupal evangelist. I've been working in Drupal for over 10 years. I like Drupal because it is very content-centric. What Drupal does, instead of creating pages, it focuses on content. And that's a huge difference, I think, between WordPress and Drupal. WordPress, you're basically creating a page. In Drupal, you're just creating content, and the system itself decides what pieces of content go where on the page. And I find that very dynamic and refreshing to be able to do that, and it relieves the content creators from having to decide what an entire page looks like. So everything is done very programmatically. Yes, I'm sure there are other, especially platforms you can pay for. Custom platforms you can build. From open source perspective, I think Drupal's got the other open source products beat. The ability to create the different types of content types, and to have those relationships between them, and to have a really strong taxonomy function, I think doesn't really can't match that in the open source space. Any other questions? So I did not bring any business cards tonight. So if you need to reach me, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Meetup, and happy to talk to anybody. Okay. we're going to take a quick break here and switch over to John.
Twitter went crazy. Tweeting and commenting and yeah. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
Which is absolutely optional. Good question. Here, try maybe. So this has to go into your. So first of all, let's make it. All set. Yeah. Oh no! I was gonna put it through. Okay. And I think if you put this in your USB, I think you can use this.
Cool. Let's give it a try.
Give it a try?
Sure. Wow. Okay. First, we need to make it so we can see. Thank you.
It's hard to guess where.
Okay, why don't you hit a button?
Press the key immediately to the right of the shift key on the left side. We can want you to hit the Z.
Yeah, I was trying.
Huh.
Oh, do you want to hit anything on that just in case?
It's seeing it.
Okay, but that's okay. I don't care. I'm going to vote for English.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and now hit a button. Let's see what happens. Awesome. That's all we need. I don't care what it thinks. Is it? Have we given people enough time?
What's that?
Have we given people enough time? Okay, cool.
All right. You want to go ahead and grab a seat again. We'll get started here in a second. Okay. So John we've had the pleasure of having John here to speaking several times. He's been on several of panel discussions that we've done. He's been a regular for a long time. We really appreciate you being here this evening. And so without further ado, John Whalen.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so this was the thing that we were just talking about. That's cooler than my talk, but it's okay. I'm totally okay with that. So, so there you go. Circuit. There you go. Check your secret. Right. I like that. Okay. So welcome everyone. So I am your second speaker. So I will try to be animated and keep us moving a little bit and thinking about fun stuff. So, okay, so really quickly, us at Brilliant Experience, so we tend to do some of this early research stuff, strategy, and building all sorts of sort of experiences. So from helping farmers in the middle of Pennsylvania to high net worth people on Long Island. We've done lots of cool stuff. So anyway, I'm happy to tell you some stories and after beer, and I'll let you be. So there you go. And yeah, we have some people we worked with. That's cool. Okay, so so here is what I want to talk about. So in general, and actually I just need to know this part. So how many of you would consider yourselves UX-er? Okay, and how many would say like a developer? Okay, good, we're gonna throw you in the bus soon. Executives? Yeah, you're in big trouble. Okay, and product owners, product manager kind of people. Okay, good. Well, I'm going to be equally offensive. That's wonderful. Okay, so so I would like to say from a UX perspective that we try to actually help people, right? We're kind of people pleasers, and we want. So how many of you actually would like the world to be in a better place? All right. Okay. Good. Good. The other of you, yeah. Okay. And. Yeah, we try to empathize with all kinds of folks. That's what we like to think that one of our skills, I have a PhD in psychology. I like to think I can empathize with people and think from their perspective, right? So, if you have that kind of skill, now there's like tons of jobs for UXers. So, hey, you're going to be successful in everything. And actually, yes, I did get all these fortunes, so it's good news. But here's 4 of them coming true. And so, you know, sometimes it's a logical possibility that some people might not always welcome you UXers with open arms. And so has anyone ever experienced that? Okay, okay. So yeah, you know, so you might be familiar. So I don't know if anyone's had to add more cats, but right, if someone's hesitant to use or test, or someone wants to scope down until it's a skin version of the old one, or, you know, take your pick. So do you all know about the UX drinking game? So this is where this is from. So you can go check out that. You can just keep doing that while we're doing this talk, and you'll be smiling. And all I think I'm doing a great job, but you're just having fun with that. So, okay, good. And so does anyone need to share their story of UX or not being entirely embraced at your organization? Or you could have a fictional character that you could imagine. Please, go ahead.
So I asked a client once who was telling me what their users want. I said, how do you know that? Have you talked to your users? She said, no, I don't have to. I've been working here for 18 years.
Well, I actually, so I've got a parallel to that is the, well, I was a lawyer 30 years ago, so I know for sure that. And so, yeah, I actually think things might have changed in 30 years. It's possible. Go ahead.
Are we sharing stories of things we've heard, like one of them, this is the way we've always done it, and it's always worked.
Okay, that's not bad. Okay, so this is the way we've always done it. It's always worked. Okay, so just like Blockbuster. Okay, great. Anyone else? Yeah, please go ahead.
This tiny thing from back in the basement of the website has to be in the main menu.
Okay, so this has to be in the main menu, right? Okay, so please go ahead.
Yeah, that UX is just going to drive up the costs and make us late on our schedule.
Oh, right, it's a schedule. Nice one. I like that one. Okay, good. So you got some real like, ooh, you. Yeah, okay, good. I don't know if I have that one here. That's a good one. I'm sorry, I missed that one. Good catch. Okay, so let's start by thinking about our empathy for our colleagues, right? So if you, let's see, so is Jim still around? Yeah, so Jim, we were talking about like getting the like species and the, so after species you get to phylum, I think, and stuff like that? Okay, so yeah, you know, so if you were going to, you know, talk about an executive and how you might classify them, right? As a UX person, you know, you might have, you know, a certain kind of criteria that you would use to decide what sort of person they are. And so, you know, we want to really treat people with respect and empathy and deepest caring. So, you know, and so you want to make sure that everyone in your team is equally represented here. And so just make sure you really understand what it is they're thinking about and why they're choosing to do the things they do. And so, you know, and I like that one. It sounds like wolf. Okay, right. So, and I don't know, you know, I don't know who came up with these things. I just write them down, right? So, yes, I do like that picture, right? So, does any of you get this? You know, when you say, "Hey, I've got this great idea," and then you got that face, right? It's like so. So this says, right, either a no-can-do pod or condescending Smirkosaurus. So you can, I don't know, is one of those more fitting? I don't know.
Condescending Smirkosaurus.
Okay, okay. Fair enough. Did I misclassify any of these so far? Did anyone? Okay. Okay. So, you know, if these are the ways that we're representing our colleagues, then why is it that we're not getting the, you know, traction we'd like to, right? I don't know. I'm just a psychologist. So, so I think that, you know, we want to actually use our UX superpowers and think from their perspective and so on. So, okay, so this is where I think we're at. So what should we do about it, right, is the kind of question. So I would like to, so how many of you feel like you're on the left side of these scales? So I'm more a usability tester than I am an insight generator, right? So, okay, thank you. Or I'm, you know, informing a product to informing a product roadmap, right? So in theory, you should know what is coming next for your audience and what they like to do, as opposed to just, is this the right direction? Or, you know, hey, I'm a utility player. You know, you have this team and the team has, you know, the developer and the content strategist and, you know, we'll have one of those UXers or UX researchers, whatever, you know, it's good. As opposed to like, hey, you know, we should be helping to, if we know what the audience is interested in, and we're probably one of the most forward thinking that way with evidence, not just let's see, how'd it go? I've done this for 18 years. Then maybe we can be a really good advisor to some of the really senior people, right? Where the people who've done some research are like at the cutting edge here and should really help to inform that. So I'd like to get you guys a little more to the right side. Okay, cool, let's go. So here's my argument. And it's basically that I want to make sure we show that we have some value. Okay, so let's start very simply. We want to make sure that we are empathizing with our internal stakeholders, and then we're also evangelizing some of the UX stuff. And we want to actually get ourselves really embedded in the system, that of course we need to get this research before we can go forward. And of course we have to test this before we program it. Are you crazy? And then eventually getting to, well, where should we go next year? And what should the budget be like for that? And so, hey, there's something that I'd like to get my hands on. So no, it's not just because I'm a consultant, it's because I'm doing the right thing, okay? Oh, by the way, if you're welcome to take a, what do you want to call it, a slidey? But I also have the slides here too, so you don't have to worry about writing everything down. But you're welcome to ask any questions along the way too. Okay, cool. Well, let's get started on our little road here. Okay, so one thing is why should you actually listen to my ideas here? So I would like to say that I've been around the block a little bit, but not too much. And also that, yeah, I've actually had to do these meetings with, the billion-dollar corporation executive and stuff. So, we start to hear the way that person is thinking directly, and not everyone gets that chance. And, really I was going for, what had actually, so distilling recent successes is that cup half full way to say I've fallen flat in my face several times, and I found some things that work and some that don't, so I'm going to tell you about the good stuff. But I also want to mention, have any of you heard this? Okay, well, that's why I put stuff up here that you don't know about. Okay, so I can't fully explain why it's called Dollars to Donuts, but Steve Portugal on the West Coast, and sort of my peer there, had done a series of interviews with lots of interesting folks who are the head of UX at different places in UX research. And they told their stories, like I know Liz Kell, for example. And so Liz said, yeah, when I first came, it was like me and one other guy, and nobody knew what UX was. And so, maybe 8 years ago, how many people think Comcast had awesome UX? Okay, so it's a little bit of an uphill battle, I know, but she's trying her best, I swear. But she had to first say, hey, here's what a usability test is like, and then, oh, maybe we should try that again, and oh, that didn't work so well, did it? And hey, can I show you the video? Don't listen to me. And so all these people told their stories of how they grew their team from being very, early in the just building it up to something much more substantial and much more impactful. And so actually when I realized this was here, I was like, so how many of you have watched Stranger Things? Yeah, so I don't watch those things very often, but I was like, okay, one more hour. So that for me, this was the same way. I listened to all these things, and actually they are very congruent with what I'm going to propose to you. So maybe this is worth listening to. Cool. Okay, so let me try and keep us moving here. So demonstrating value with usability testing here. So I think that almost always the first thing you have to do is be so flexible. And so by the way, we know that us usability people, even me, I'm not built quite like a seal, but we want to act like them. And I don't want to not give deference to people who are very impressive in doing even more impressive things than user research were that possible. So, but I'd say that, you have to really quickly figure out, okay, what do we got to do today? And adapt like crazy, and then get some data and just get it quick and keep moving and get to the next project, right? And so this means, so when I met folks from Cisco, and they said, okay, well, I'm just going to analyze the situation for 6 months. I'm going to get Post-it notes to surround my room, and then I'm going to be ready to do a wireframe. And and our agile programmers didn't always feel they were completely compatible with that because their sprints were not that long. And so I guess I'm saying, okay, if your sprints are that long, your research is going to be that long. So you just really have to adapt is the idea. And so, the notion here of a seal is light footprint, big impact. And so, sometimes you can give people stuff at the end of the week when you had it at the start of the week. And say, hey, we're trying to get to this, and maybe not necessarily here's exactly how this would change, but here's what people are trying to do as opposed to what you're letting them do right now. And just, I noted pick your battles. So you found all kinds of stuff wrong with this shit all over the place. Well, I'm sorry, we're streaming, but I will, I'll try to keep it in context. So, but I want you to say, here are the 2 things that your executives or this team really needs to listen to. If nothing else, just listen to these 2 things, please. If you want more, I've got them over here. But just, focus on those so we actually get some impact. Okay, cool. So, you'll have some setbacks, and I want to say, your SEAL teams, you got to keep working at it and keep going, pushing that rock uphill. But the other thing is, if you've got that stuff, I really want you to share. So we tend to be crazy, like here's the recordings, here's the highlights, here's the show, here's a big poster, we share it all over the place. And the other thing, actually, have any of you, when you've done a week of research or whatever amount you've done, sent a 4 bullet point thing of what are the takeaways? So how many of you have done it? Admit. Nice, you too. Okay, you guys win the gold star. But so that means all of you should next time. So, and the reason why do you send just 4 things, like in bullet points? So it can be shared up to people who can only handle 4 bullet points. Okay, so we want to make sure that this is sent to someone's boss's boss, and then they can forward it on to their boss's boss. And there used to be a hair commercial. It's like, and so on, and so on. And so that's what we want, right? We want that viral stuff. Okay, cool. Liz Cal said this really nicely. She said, the first person I did this with said, you actually, found something we already knew, but you actually made it like human to us, so we might actually do something about it. So I just want to say, and sometimes you have to warn people like, okay, I know I sent him this big highfalutin researcher, but I'm going to find stuff you already know, but it's just going to be from a different perspective. So just recognize they'll be like, oh God, here it comes again. He's going to tell us something we already knew. Boy, that's exciting. But I think that hearing it from that end audience and stuff like that can be really valuable. Okay, cool. So we've done that. Then, hey, keep calm and say yes. And so we really want you to say yes to the next project. So someone says, oh, I just want you to do a quick focus group with 3 people in the cafeteria. And you're like, oh God, but just they actually ask for your help. So just like, hey, that's a great idea. I'm just going to do it a little different. It's okay, no problem, I'll just do it. And you'll do it slightly differently than they said. But, and this inviting new teams and sneak in a little bit of synthesis and going deeper. Hey, you guys asked me just, does this framework? I just want to let you know that the whole idea behind this was a little, so, we want to sneak in a little bit over time. So we're sharing, we're getting a little new stuff, we're trying to do that kind of thing. And we're just saying yes, so other people they'll come back and we get more and gain more traction. Okay, so we've got that. Then what we're trying to do now is just empathize. Okay, gotta try to empathize a little bit with this guy. Okay, now just a little bit. And then also, we want to evangelize their work. So one of the things that I don't think we do enough as UXers and UX researchers is to understand who has the keys to the castle. So, for example, okay, here's another one. So, Jim, you're at a big company. So your boss's boss's boss. Do you have that person's probably public, so you can probably find out on your website somewhere how they're bonused. And so that would mean, so probably there's a strategic direction that's publicly available information for someone that high up and what they actually are going to get if that works, and they're probably pretty interested in that. So if you can start to position your stuff as solving that problem, because it probably really is, well, great, but normally we just say, oh, geez, this user really needs this, and that doesn't always drive the action as much as other things might. So despite the org chart, despite anything else, so there's the org chart, and then, so I don't know if you've ever experienced this where, say, here's the pyramid, but like that person there somehow has this crazy influence over everything, right? Have anyone? Okay, so yeah, there's one group that I'm working with right now. No, I'm not going to tell you. And it's amazing, the one person who does contracts, right? She's just a nice, mild-mannered, energetic person, but man, she can like squeeze any executive she wants to and say, I think we should do this. And so you need to know that person, right? Because she's got the keys. And literally, actually, she's the person who hits fund, so that's another good person to know, right? So we want to know what's being measured in your organization. So if you're actually getting to that, you're solving that problem, and you're helping with that bonus, gosh, maybe you'll get a little more traction, right? Okay. The other thing I just want to make sure is if you're coming in new, like us, consultants sometimes do, we just want to know things like, don't ever say phase 2, right, in this organization, because that means it's going to die. So, you want to make sure you know all these secret sayings. Okay, so I did work for a little while with this group called the IRS, and so they wanted to have this thing that was, you log in and you can get your own stuff, right? So what had happened before we came, right? They thought they'd call it, well, with Comcast, there's, my Comcast, and with Care First, there's my Care First. I've got a great idea. We'll call it my IRS or MRSA. And so it turns out there's a disease you get, can get. I'm from Toronto. They had it all over the place. So anyway, I'm not going to call this thing my IRS because I've learned what happened before. Okay, so those are the kind of things that we want to think about to be sensitive to. Okay, the other thing we want to do is let people understand what it is we do. And you know this, but I just wanted to highlight. So one of the people talked about their reality show. So they would show an unedited video of someone trying a product and have it like at a kiosk in like where the food is, so people can keep hitting play. And just the fact that they didn't say anything, they just let the person do what they're doing, and they're like, oh my God, why does this do this? And just it comes straight from the client or whoever it is that's the real target audience, and not from you. Suddenly they start to understand what we're talking about. And likewise, hey, if you've got an agile team or you're doing lean startup, or you're doing lean startup agile water flow, or agile flow, or water Joel, or whichever one you're doing, you want to make sure that they understand, oh, you can put this in and it won't slow down the time and the budget and the deadlines and and I had actually someone come to me and say, John, you guys are doing like test of like dozen people, like, why are you doing a test of like 40,000? Like, what should 9 people tell you, right? Like, come on. And so, okay, I'd like to think it tells you something slightly different with qualitative versus quantitative. And that's a whole discussion, but we can make sure we know that someone might think that, your stuff, yeah, thanks a lot. It's really nice. Okay, bye. That they're thinking that. And so we want to make sure we assuage them that idea. Anything else? And a radical idea is how you can actually make the product better. So I know it's not rocket science, but just don't forget. So, here's an example of how you might integrate. Hey, we're going to do our research right before, and then right before your sprint. And when your sprint comes up, we're going to be right there for you. And we're actually doing stuff for the next one. And we'll be all set for that one. And then when you're doing that one, we can help and support you. And hey, maybe that's the way it could work. And by the way, for those of you who've done development in a more traditional way, we'll actually probably not have a spec document. So, there are things like this that we'll talk through with people and get them to get a little calmer with. And so I don't know, should I change this to 1? Has anyone died from? I know some people act like they're going to die, but I don't think anyone's actually died, right? Okay, good. So this is just be aware of their concerns and their perspective. And okay, it's okay to have a little fun with it sometimes, and maybe I'll keep thinking. And just translating, all of us talk about, okay, so what's a good UX speak thing that we might say? Wow, okay, I gotta talk even faster. Okay, so I don't know, like, so we're talking about, oh, well, contextual inquiry found that blah, 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 blah. And, we have all our little words that we don't even realize, like, oh, the semantic algorithm for this is just way off. And so we want to just make sure we actually speak product manager. We speak, marketing, like, hey, this will help you position this for the best sales. Oh, okay. Have any of you done an immersion room? Okay, so the idea here is, so just to make sure. So do you know what I'm talking about, first of all? Okay, good. So everyone's like, well, I don't know what he's talking about. Okay, you know what he's talking about? I don't know what. Okay, good. So, okay, so this is where, in this room, we would put all our personas up on the windows, and we put what they're doing, and we'd have an example. Here's Bob that's like, standing up here right here, and then we'd have a video of a Bob example doing stuff, and it basically, you can start to see, and here's the living room that person lives in, and because we're working with Walmart, it's going to look different than the Saks living room, and all those kind of things, and really try and say, here's what your audience is really like, and here's what they're really experiencing. So it's just trying to get people to go from, I'm in my normal place with my foosball table on the way past the reflecting pool, and maybe my clients aren't exactly having that experience, and so I want you to have that same experience that your clients do, and just have those real video clips, because they're not going to believe you, they can believe them. It's cool, and they'll laugh, but that's okay, they remember it. Okay, cool. So but I'd like to say that actually having them do that in this room is really cool, but we really want to get people out in the field with us. So I always try to get people to ride shotgun with me, and I pick random people from the group, right? So the product owner and the product manager and this developer and that developer, and try to get different folks to actually see it live. And then have them report what happened and not have me report it. And we want to make sure they know why it matters. So whether it's, hey, they're going to use this more, save time, or there's going to be less dev time, or we're going to decrease training, whatever the button is that you want to push, we want to make sure we find it. And we want to translate it to, hey, you know, are you interested in a couple $1 million? Because we're not even, we don't charge $2 million for this stuff. So it's going to be a great ROI. So, okay. So I guess I just want to say, translate to whatever language they speak. So they speak numbers, we're going to translate it to numbers. If they're speaking, you know, cycle time and Fibonacci numbers, we're going to say, we're going to bring those way down. And so whatever the language is, we're going to work with that language. Okay, cool. The next thing is, okay, if we can do that, we want to make sure that we're everywhere. So what's one good way to get all these people and understand what project is coming next so that you are aware and you're doing the research before it actually starts? What's one good way to get that intel? Where, you know, they're not just calling you up and saying, hey, would you do this? But you want to know where everything is and where it's all happening. Okay, so you could be embedded. Okay, and on your way to being embedded, what else would you do? Come on. Pizza. Okay, so we want you to bring pizza and give it to the developers, right? Because the developers will tell you what they're working on or what they're about, and they're like, oh, we got a sprint 0, and there's blah, blah, blah. Great, you know? I didn't know about that sprint 0, and they're going to take so long to do sprint 0 that we're going to get the research done in time. So pizza. Okay, it can be donuts, you know, I'm not, or, you know, even healthy food, maybe, but I haven't found that to be as successful. But, okay. So we want to do that. So we want to go on that level, grassroots. We want to go on the high level. So what decisions is someone about to make, and when do they need to make that decision on that particular development process? And you know, hey, you know, leader, you know what, if you totally, you know, it just went really, really south, what would be the risk, like, say, to your job or your, you know, family, marriage, lifestyle? You know, so no, but what are the risks here for your division? And you know, maybe you know, what can we do to actually help you make sure it's on time and on budget and successful and all those kind of things? Okay, cool. So we just want to make sure that we're thinking from, you know, hey, fellow leader, here's what I think I can offer you. What do you think about that? You know, let's reduce risk. Let's make sure you're on time. Let's make sure you're a star for your boss's boss's boss. Would that be okay? That's what I want to do. So really in this, we want to make sure we're collaborating on scope early on. We're making these progress check-ins. Why do we want to do progress check-ins? Yeah, well, we're advertising that we're doing cool stuff that's helping the organization. So yes, it actually is keeping people informed as the original source, but the sneaky one is that we're actually helping to make sure everyone knows what we're doing and why it might benefit the organization. So, because it takes a little while to sink in, and the marketing people know you have to hammer away at this, right? So that's what we're going to do. And you know, anytime we can have someone else present what we're doing, we want to do that. And the last thing I was going to say is if you get big enough, like, shoot, who did I talk to about Walmart? You, yes. So sorry, I didn't know if you're still here. So so when you get big enough, the question is, should you have all your UX people actually be hired by that team, or should it be something more central? The argument that a lot of folks gave that I think I would too is you still want them to have a home base and not to necessarily be just in that team. And why? Because you want the UX team to be independent and be able to tell that person, oh my God, this thing sucks that we're doing. And so, you know, they need to hear the real deal, right? And so if your job is on the line because the product owner hired you, then logically you have a vested interest in not saying bad stuff, right? So we want to make sure that you won't be fired for telling someone the baby's ugly. So, okay. Okay, I said that out loud. Okay, so anything else? Yeah, you know, and then we get to things like, okay, if we're going to be embedded, we're going to give you principles that you can use anytime we're even not around. And you'll still think of us again, but it'll make things a little bit easier with your structured input and so on. And so ultimately, we want to get you to be some sort of partner, right? So, yeah, I know, we'll find a new one, but we'll be a partner with the next guy, okay, or woman. So I just want to remind you that, you know, we say, so when I walk into Capital One. You know, that right on at the opening level, when the doors open, you see this huge disrupt sign, right? And so it's like, oh, we're going to have these delighters. They're going to have like empathy, delighter, disruptors. It's going to be really cool. And so there's going to be this like experience journey that's like unbelievable with our contextual inquiry research. And so, you know, in our design thinking prototypes, just like blew my mind about that, delighters. And so, and you know, this is executives are hearing this instead, right? Like, oh my God, you know what? Nightmare. This is a nightmare. So, so we just want to make sure we stop saying this, right? And we don't give that impression. Okay, good. So what we try to do is really try to get the executives in there, so actually out of the building as fast as we can. So we have little trips we take with executives, right? We take them, it can be local, it can be, we can fly them out somewhere cool, but we try to get them to understand that, hey, design, research, all this empathy stuff can actually help you in your decisions going forward and get you so you're not the next blockbuster. And so we want to make it as a competitive advantage. And, you know, think of all these numbers and needles we can move with this stuff that's your new tool in your quiver. And so it's just an opportunity for research to lead and have insights rather than be, oh yeah, you're the like research people and make sure everything's okay. That's a box checked, okay. You know, we want it to be thought of very differently because it would be more powerful for them and for us. Cool. So we actually, we're starting to do what's called a digital petting zoo that we do in different places. So we bring in, you know, one of these, an Oculus and a HoloLens and an Alexa and Cortana and Siri and Hound is the other one I'm thinking about. And Google Now and all these different tools, and then things like GSR measurements and eye tracking, and show them what's possible and what we can measure and what are these things they're not necessarily thinking about yet for their line of products and what could be and where it's going. And then they understand they need us to go check out what's happening, and so they're ready for the next thing. Cool. So it can be a little bit of cool stuff, but we want to actually make sure that it's actually giving them something that's more strategic as well. So so this says, yeah, anyone who's read the HBR can get the importance of UX, but that doesn't translate, you know, that may not translate into what it takes to do that, right? So, so how many of you know what HBR is? Okay, yeah, so you need to know, you need to keep that language stuff going. So you know, oh yeah, Fortune didn't have that, HBR did, it's so obvious. So right, the Harvard Business Review. So check it out, you'll find an article on anything you want there that you need a good bullet point for, and you just hand them that, and they're like, whoa, came from HBR, okay, cool. So, you know, hey, he or she is speaking my language, so this is good. So we're really trying to make it so that, you know, ultimately, you know, you were originally working on this one product, and now you're trying to figure out where the company should go. And so that means you need to bring together lots of different data sources. You're going from product design to, say, whole service design with multiple channels and how you market this and all these kind of things. So you're going from informing the product to also informing strategy. Cool. And so, you know, the management loves to, how many of you have been trained on design thinking against your will? Okay, but you know, I actually think it's the notion of having empathy and iterative design, all good. Sometimes it can be a little bit like, yeah, I read a book for half an hour. I'm good, I'm a design thinker. And so, you know, we'll try to get those people moving along, but I think that, you know, ultimately it's a good thing they're starting to think from a design perspective. And I just wanted to remind you that, hey, the other thing you should go knock on the door of marketing and say, hey, I've got these quotes from people with this new design we've got, and they're like falling over themselves, loving it. Do you think you might want to like share that with the people you're selling to? Or, you know, hey, I've got the way that these people are thinking right now. Do you think that would help you with how you might present this to our clients? Just wondering, you know, just have all this stuff for you that's all waiting, perfectly made for you. And so, you know, we've got quotes, we've got what, you know, delivered an emotional response, and, you know, what is that mental model of our buyers? So, oh my God, when the sales team finally realizes what you're doing, they're like, where were you all my life? So please do make sure you share this with those kind of folks, because what's the other reason you want to share it with these folks? Marketing has money. So, you know, they can keep you going with other things too. They also tend to know marketing where the CEO wants to do stuff next. So another good reason. Okay. No, I'm not being a psychologist here. I'm just having fun. Okay. So, and so, you know that there can be things like we can calculate opportunities and iteratively test and all that kind of stuff. So we can get to there. And really, we want to get to this notion of being a strategic partner. Cool. So to the grand summary here of all this, and thank you so much for still being here. is this is the outcome of your life. So congratulations. Just in case, if anyone does actually say they want to add more cats, you now have a license to drink. And ultimately, these are the 4 things I was going to argue about how you want to get. So this is your slide if you want to take it. And so this is what I was arguing, is that we're going to go from just early demonstrating value to actually getting to be part of your organizational psychology, to really being embedded and having people follow along and give you the intel of where things are going next and having you help to lead that, to actually helping to guide what's happening next in the whole corporation. All right. So good. That's I have another slide to say thank you, but I'm not going to go there because we're taking pictures. So thank you very much.
We will post these slides, the URLs at the bottom too. So if you guys want to grab them later, you can.
All right. Cool.
Questions?
And that's me and that's me.
Questions. There's got to be questions.
All right. So we'll start from the back and move up. Okay. Please go ahead.
So marketing guys have all the money, and they have something called CX that they care
Mm-hmm.
about. Don't care so much about UX. Can you sneak in and grab some of that money?
Yeah, so I actually presented this originally at the User Experience Professional Association, and so obviously I framed this a little bit more around the UX notion. But I think the idea is, why can't that be part of a domain for a group that's trying to deeply understand the audience and what they really need? So I would argue that we fit beautifully into CX. There are sometimes folks that are more, Net Promoter Score, or they've got different metrics from, do you prefer the Gardner metrics or the other metrics? But anyway, we can play that game too and say, okay, if you want those metrics improved, and we want to do a journey map, and we can identify the pain points, and that's stuff we do anyway. So I think that showing these videos and stuff can make people realize, hey, we're going to be your CX heroes. So yeah, I'm happy, and that's actually speaking the language of the other folks. So we're happy to do that.
Can I add something to that? Just having been in a couple big organizations, a lot of the time there's a tension between the marketing organization and the product organization. And as UX folks, we're in an excellent position to bridge between those two if you have the fortitude. But it's a great opportunity to connect. Because they're thinking very differently about the problems, but we have an opportunity to be a bridge.
All right, next question. Oh, I think it was you.
Yeah, so this is kind of a very specific question. So I wanted to get your thoughts that relate to your presentation around, so in a large enterprise or a large organization, you have others who want to kind of attach themselves to whatever the latest buzzword is, whether it's design thinking,
No.
or et cetera, put in your latest buzzword of the week. Like HTA and some of these other, that stands for high-tech anthropology, some of these other sort of canned UX light kind of what they're branding as methodologies out there that are being marketed. Have you had any experience with other parts of companies kind of attaching that to that sort of sold methodology that basically encroaches on what we've been doing for decades?
Right.
So it's kind of the latest thing. Like if I can buy HTA or high-tech anthropology, that's one example. Of
Yeah.
many that people are trying to capitalize right now. They're trying to get like a sheriff's badge, like by getting a 7-hour course.
Absolutely.
Basically do a light version of what we basically, our livelihood and what we base our careers on.
Right. So you've got the you do user experience. So that's been around like a little while, right? So because what I do is actually neuro design thinking, and it's actually quite impressive. And so I don't know if you know about all the psychology stuff, but yeah. So take your pick of the latest, greatest, and I guess I would go back to. You've already tried to vet, here is the number you're going to change, quantitatively. And this is what we're after for your ultimate long-term bonus. And so I think attaching yourself to those long-term directives is one of the things that's most powerful. And I guess, that's where I'm happy to have that person ride along with me and see that research and come up with their, cool. Actually, you also have to use, it's something 3JS. What's the to do some of the D3? Thank you. Right, so you've got to do like a really cool picture of the results so it isn't fully understandable. But yeah, I mean, I guess with those folks, I try to say, right, what's the net? Is there any new information there, and how does that fit into the CX and the UX? And anyway, so yes, we get that all the time. And I guess the best thing I can say is, if you're starting to get into, here are the people I'm talking to, and the most senior people say, look, a shiny ball, then I guess we tend to say, oh yeah, that's totally, we love that stuff, and here's how we do that too. And yeah, we're going to bring that person along to make sure that nothing is missed and we get it all together. And often, we've got really concrete things to say about this product or direction. And sometimes those folks don't have as much of that. So I'm happy to go kind of head to head with those folks and bring them along and say, hey, we're all one big happy family.
Have you ever had experience sort of debunking some of that light version of what we're doing? So in 7 hours, you can learn how to do user observations out in the field, and then come back and do some lightweight wireframing and some lightweight prototyping, and then you can go do some lightweight usability tests. And guess what? You learn that whole career inside of 7 hours, and now you have a sheriff's badge to go do that shiny thing that the executives want you to check that box for.
Yeah, so this is like lean anthropology. Yeah, so I guess then we start to bring back the like, oh, here's all the research articles on our stuff, and here are all the books on our stuff, and here, so, I guess it depends on that particular individual or set of individuals. But yeah, sometimes there's a series of trainings that are done by this one group, and they're like, oh yeah, you don't do what we do now because we have this new cool stuff. And I guess I try to outlast that, and also try to say, okay, here's some deep background behind this, that here's the way human brains have evolved, and they haven't evolved that much in the last 48 hours, so we should be okay. And so just try still a couple little pokes every once in a while, please.
This is just an overall question. So today I talked to a chief operating officer of a company,
yeah.
and he said, oh, you're new to the user experience team. I don't think he knew what that was.
Yeah.
And then I went to the doctor's office, and they said user experience, and kind of just changed the subject. How do you explain user experience in like one sentence? I think it doesn't matter if I'm embedded in the company or I'm like out talking to a friend or a doctor. Like, I can't figure out how to articulate it in a very quick way.
So my PhD is actually from cognitive science, and my old advisor used to say, when I used to be in psychology, people thought they knew what I did, but now that I'm in cognitive science, they know they don't know what I do. So yeah, so first of all, there's a lot of empathy for you in the room here. And so what do all of you say for UX? What's your answer? Sure, go ahead.
I have been saying for years, when people say, what's usability, whatever, I say, when you can't find something on a website, a usability person helps design it so you can find it. And everybody understands that, because everybody's had that experience.
Okay, good. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, say how you make things be approved.
Yeah, I guess I like to say something to the effect of, yeah, we try to understand what people are trying to do as opposed to what the tools today allow them to do, and we imagine what it could be. And then I say, because I'm Canadian, so there you go, eh? And then they laugh, and we can change the subject politely. So it's good. Any other? So first of all, thank you all for tolerating the lack of air conditioning right now. I'm really impressed. But any other comments, questions?